this morning with right in the corner where you are. And I'm going to ask you to turn to 2 Kings chapter 5. We're going to talk today about a little girl who isn't even recorded with a name in the Bible. But she does a tremendous job of right in the corner where she's at. Hopefully as you look through the Bible, you will find a lot of stories of people that are right in the corner where they're at. And if you remember, I've been saying that you might think, well, I can't change the world. Well, you can brighten the corner where you're at. You can change somebody's life that God brings into the course of your life. We never know. It might be the grocery clerk that checks us out. It might be the person at the restaurant. You really want to try something different when you go out to eat on Sunday or another time of the week. Maybe you eat out every day of the week. Ask the waiter or the waitress if you're sitting down, or ask the person behind the counter, say, we're Christians and we're going to pray for our meal. Is there something we can pray for you about? Be amazed. Be amazed at people's response. Now, if you're sitting down with a waiter or waitress, after you pray and eat, you better leave a good tip, because they're going to think you're a pretty lousy Christian if you don't. But we need to work on looking. We've talked about showing faith to somebody and helping them with faith. We've talked about showing kindness. We've talked about showing loyalty. Today we're going to talk about showing hope. Praise God for the hope that we are given in God. In His Word, praise God for the hope that we have in Jesus Christ. And I have to say something to you. I have hope in Him because God has never broken a promise to me yet. Other people have. Other people have. Politicians have. Doctors have. Lawyers have. Friends have. God's never broken His promises. And so it keeps me to have hope. And people in this world need hope. Let me give you a little background of the story before we read these verses. Here in chapter 5. The Israelites, the Hebrews, the Jews, have been under one king for a while. They were under Saul, then they were under David, and under Solomon. And after Solomon died, his son and another man had a big argument, and so the land of Israel was divided into two parts. 10 tribes in the north that were sort of near the Sea of Galilee, and 2 tribes in the south. And so it became known as Israel and Judah. And if you read through the Bible and you know the stories of Elijah, as she just sang about, Elijah was primarily involved with the people in the north. They walked away from God a little faster than the people in the south. But Elijah was involved with them, and Elijah, of course, had the tremendous victory on Mount Carmel, where he called down fire from God out of heaven, and it destroyed the altar and the sacrifice that was there. And Elijah, after having that great victory, was very depressed, and he went out in the wilderness, and he felt like his life should come to an end. He said, there's nobody serving God. And God said, I have yet 5,000 that have not bent the knee to the false idol. So God was giving him hope. Well, we're going to skip forward a few years. Now Elijah passes the mantle of being the prophet to Elisha. Elisha, 2 distinctly different men who had 2 distinctly different ministries. Elisha, again, is dealing with the tribes in the north. God is working with the tribes in the north. He wants them to come back to repentance. He wants them to come back, and so He allows them to be attacked not only by the Philistines, but also by the Syrians. Just as today, the Syrians don't get along real great with Israel. And so we come to this story of a young girl who has no name. I believe we'll see her in heaven one of these days. We'll find out her name. But the Bible never records the name. She's just mentioned here in this story. Some of you will have heard this story or heard this message about this before, but we're focusing on the girl as opposed to what happened in America. We'll begin reading in verse number 1. Now Naaman, commander of the army of the king of Syria, was a great and honorable man in the eyes of his master, the king of Syria, because by him the Lord had given victory to Syria. Syria is just to the north of the land of Israel. And this is a very powerful man. He is in command of the army. He's had great victories. God has allowed him to do this because, see, God allowed the Syrians to come in and try to bring the Israelites back to God by having them be attacked. So Naaman's a very powerful man, as most generals are. Think about some of the generals that we've known recently, some of the ones that have helped us through Desert Storm and through the Iraq War and through Afghanistan. Some of those men are very powerful. This man is a very powerful man. He was also a mighty man of valor. Now we're going to get to the sad part. But a leper. I don't know how familiar you are with the disease of leprosy. The disease of leprosy is something that begins to eat away the soft tissue of your body. It'll eat away at your ears, it'll eat away at your nose, your lips, your fingers, your toes. It's a very disfiguring thing. It'll make your skin turn white. Throughout the Bible, it's representative of sin in people's lives. But we see throughout the Bible, from the story of Moses all the way to the story of the time of Jesus, that there are lepers involved. Today, leprosy is largely a disease that's been conquered. But even just 100 years ago, they had leper colonies, where if you had leprosy, you would be forced to go and live there. In the Old Testament, the people were not allowed to be around the general public, and they had to cry out unclean. And Naaman is a very powerful man and a very strong man, and all of a sudden it appears he's got leprosy. He'll no longer be general. He'll no longer be in power. He's headed for the biggest fall that anyone can take. And the Syrians had gone out on raids. Next slide. Thank you. You get too far ahead of me? Thank you. They'd gone out on raids and had brought back captive a young girl from the land of Israel. She waited on Naaman's wife. Then she said to her mistress, "If only my master, Naaman, were with the prophet Elisha, who is in Samaria, for he would heal him of his leprosy." And Naaman went in and told his master, saying, "Thus and thus said the girl who was from the land of Israel." We'll talk in a couple of minutes about how Naaman goes to the prophet and how Naaman does what the prophet says, and because of his faith, he is healed of his disease. But we don't want to talk about Naaman. We want to focus more on this little girl. She has no name, and she's in a very interesting situation. Do you understand what's happened to her? She's a young girl. She's been taken from her family by the enemy and dragged out and put somewhere she doesn't know where, and now she's enslaved. Totally different life. We don't know what she did before, but we know now what she's doing. And she offers hope to a very powerful man. Let's talk about how she came to that point. The first thing I want you to see today is that she disregards her own situation. She disregards her own situation. Now let's face it, we have it pretty easy here in life. You know, even the ones that might say that we're in the poverty level, that we might have a television set in our house, we probably have a car to get around, or at least an ability to ride a bus. We have it pretty good in our lives. But I don't think any of you could say that you've been taken from your homeland or taken from your home and snatched away by the enemy and dragged off to be enslaved somewhere. Not even you wives can say that. Right? Sometimes you might feel that way, but you can't even say it. But this young girl does not sit and moan and groan about what's happened to her, about her faith, and say, "Oh, it's so terrible. It used to be at home, and it was so much fun at home, and I could help Mom and Dad take care of the olive orchards and the grapes and help get all the grain and cook the bread. And it was so great to be among my family, and now I'm in this terrible situation, and I just hate life. And I'm just going to be a mute servant. I'm not going to say a word. I'm just going to walk around with a frown on my face all the time, and I'm not going to share anything good with anybody. That's not what she does. She disregards the situation. She selflessly, not selfishly, selflessly thinks of the conditions of others. In our lives, when things happen, they happen for reasons. Trouble's going to happen, but we need to be thinking about others. Jesus thought about others. As he was on the cross, he'd been beaten and he's dying, and he says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Jesus thinks of others. We need to think of others. We need to get our attention off of ourselves and get it where it needs to be, on others around us. It's a little saying. I used to complain about having no shoes until I saw the man that had no feet. If you look around, you can probably find somebody, and no matter what your condition is, you can probably find somebody who's worse off than you are. And this little girl, in spite of the fact that she's been kidnapped, dragged away from home, living in a land where they don't worship the one true God. By the way, I'll just tell you this. I think she might have been part of those 5,000 that still had not bowed the knee, because she obviously knows God is the one that you can get hope from, and she's willing to say, if you go back and you get together with the prophet, he can take care of you. So she's obviously living for, but she's not. She's been taken out of that, and she could have every reason in the world to say, I'm not going to be nice to Naaman. Look at how I'm treated. I'm a slave. I'm not going to do anything. She selflessly thinks of the condition of others. You're in a hospital bed, tremendous pain. Can you think of the person that's next to you in the bed next to you? And pray for them and offer them hope? Disregard your own situation? As I said, Jesus was on the cross. What did he say to John? My mother is now your mother. You take care of her. What did he say to the thief who had been railing on him? And finally said, you are. Jesus said, today you will be with me in paradise. Even on the cross, when the sins of the world were upon him, and he had suffered so greatly, he thought of others. This young girl also holds fast to what she knows is true. Maybe she'd seen and heard of some of the miracles that had happened. Maybe she'd heard what Elijah had done on Mount Carmel and what Elisha has done. If you read some of the previous chapters, he's turned a poisonous meal into a meal everybody could eat. They lost an axe head and he made it float on the water surface. He brought a young boy back to life. It's done some tremendous miracles. And she says, I've seen God do great things, and I know God can do great things, and I'm going to hold on to that. I'm not quitting. It might be easy for you to keep your spirituality, to keep your Christianity until something terrible happens. Until you're at the hospital with your child that's been diagnosed with an incurable disease. Until you're at the funeral parlor, or you're waiting to talk to the funeral director about your loved one. Will you hold fast to your hope like this? It's a nameless young girl. We don't even know who she is. But she obviously still believes in the truth, no matter what's happened. Maybe she'd heard the story of Joseph. Maybe she'd heard that story. We don't have the time to look at all that story, but I want to show you one verse from Genesis 45. So if you'll go to Genesis 45, or we'll have it up on the screen in just a moment. Remember, Joseph has been taken there after he was beaten and thrown into a pit. He was taken to Egypt as a slave. He lived as a slave. He was accused falsely of rape. He's thrown into prison.